Thank you. Take it away, man. Hello. Hello. We're good?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, awesome. All right, we'll try to make this quick and painless because I've been in your seat eating lunch while someone's presenting. So today I'm here to talk about the hidden web, and it's probably a relatively new concept to everyone here, primarily because we made it up. But I think there's the symptoms of the hidden web, or really the challenges that publishers are feeling today, I think you guys are all familiar with. So if you ever sort of talked about challenges with audience scale, audience size, poor match rates, or even at large talking about how does all these macro trends that are happening in the advertising industry impact our revenue today, and how will it impact our revenue tomorrow. I think this is going to be directly relevant for those of you, especially publishers today. And I think that's because it is probably the most fundamental challenge that publishers are facing across the board. And it is really at the heart of the revenue pains that all of you are feeling today. And I think the good thing is that if you were to address this in whole, this actually starts to turn the tide and really starts to change the game for publishers. And really the bigger message that we as Permutive want to deliver in terms of the message that we want to convey today is that we're at a time and there's a lot that's happening in terms of privacy and all these measures and regulations that are happening. And it may seem like a threat, but I think this is a massive opportunity for publishers to really turn the tide and really in the next 3 to 5 years come out of this advertising ecosystem come out on top of this advertising ecosystem. So I'll get to what we mean by that, and I think how publishers can all work together toward the end of the presentation. Just a little bit of background on who we are, and I think more importantly why we exist as a company. We're a DMP that's exclusively focused on publishers, and we were really born out of the passion that our founders had to really think about, hey, how do we help preserve the integrity of journalism in the age of duopoly? When Facebook and Google are taking majority of the ad spend and squeezing publishers for revenue, and how do we help publishers, and how do we play our part in that mission? So it was a very mission-driven company and the product that we've built. So our mission at Permutive is fairly simple: is to empower publishers. What that means for us is to help publishers regain their seat at the table in informing how media is planned and bought. So everything that we do, from how we architected the product from the ground up, and our product roadmap and how we service our customers, it's all about being entrenched in the challenges that publishers face, challenges that are unique and inherent to the publishing world. And I think to that end, we like to sort of believe that we're really redefining what a DMP ought to do and the value it ought to deliver for its end users. And I think that's one of the reasons why we've been so fortunate to sort of earn the trust of some of the top publishers across the globe in a short 2.5 years. So back to the topic at hand in terms of what is the hidden web. I think really the best way to bring this to life is look at a very common scenario that publishers face every day, right? That is when an RFP lands on your desk, right? So an RFP comes in and you're reading the brief, and this was as if this was tailor-made for you, right? You have the perfect content, you have these users, and you have the inventory. So not only should you win this RFP, but you should be able to smash it out of the park. So you create a targeting segment, and you push that to the ad server, and you pull in a Vails report. And this is when things start to get a little bit odd and puzzling, because you have those users, but the avails are essentially telling you that, hey, you actually don't have enough to deliver against this, which is definitely a head scratcher. And we hear this in terms of audience scale, audience size, and most frequently used term is poor match rates, right? So really the point that we're trying to make and the truth that we're trying to convey today is that you actually have these users and you have the inventory, but effectively it's been hidden from you. Hence the hidden web. So I think if you look at the hidden web as a concept, it's a fairly simple concept, and it's predicated on third-party cookie. Third-party cookie, as we all know, is on its decline. And we are all familiar with the swath of announcements from Google, Apple, and all the regulations, starting with GDPR last year in Europe to CCPA in January. That's going into effect January of next year in California, to all these sort of state-level bills that we're seeing, Massachusetts, Washington, Texas, and we're going to see a federal bill fairly soon. So the problem with third-party cookies is that it's becoming blocked, and it's increasingly becoming so, right? So for the sake of simplicity and for the time that we have here, I'll just take two browsers alone that block third-party cookies by default. So you look at Firefox and Safari, right? Those two alone make up 45% of the entire web traffic, right? And you as a publisher, your portion of traffic may differ, but we'll use sort of this number for the sake of simplicity. So if we sort of then take this a problem and we put it in the context of the scenario that we're playing out today, is you start with that this is essentially a targeting segment, right? And this is perhaps what your distribution looks like. And you start to understand why you're having scale challenges and match rate issues, because effectively what's happening here is that you're actually not working with the entirety of the users that you have in this segment, right? You're actually working with 55% of those users, because 45% you cannot do anything about because the third-party cookies are blocked. And so you start to see why the match rate issues happen. But on the flip side, if you were to actually address this problem, your avails actually double instantly, right? It goes from 4 million to 8 million. So the challenge is why should publishers be artificially capped and limited from being able to monetize 100% of the audience they work hard to acquire? The additional wrinkle to this problem is that it doesn't just end with third-party cookies being blocked, right? And that has to do with problem of speed. And particularly the problem, the speed of the platforms that you're relying on today. So you take a typical scenario of a user coming onto your website, they're interacting with you, and in the background, what your platform, your DMP is essentially doing is it's trying to recognize that user, based on the data, put that user into a segment, and then communicate with the ad server so as to then serve a media that's targeted to that user. But that sequence of action happens too slow, so by the time they're ready to target you with relevant ad, the user has come and gone, right? So it's a part technology problem, and the other part is just that sort of just consumption behavior changing, and there's sort of fleeting attention span, right? So instead, what they're doing is they're waiting for that user to come back, right? So then when the user comes back, they'll look back to that data that they had from the previous visit, and they'll use that to target relevant ad. And so you're always a step behind. But effectively, in theory, that's okay. But if you look at the cohort of the users that fall into this bucket, which we call passerby traffic, and some of you guys talked about it in use flyby traffic or single visit users, that portion actually makes up for 40 to 70% of the audience that publishers have. And we've seen higher than 70%. Meaning it's not just the third-party cookies that are being blocked, but because of these speed challenges that you're having, particularly the speed of the platforms that you rely on, you're missing a huge additional chunk of the revenue, right? So that inventory that you have, you're essentially working with, when you sort of account for this further reduction, you're essentially working with 25% of the users that you have, right? Which is, I mean, unbelievable. I mean, 3/4 of your users are going missing. But if you were to sort of flip this, and if you were to address this problem, right, and you were to recoup that 75% of that users, sort of the whole story starts to change, right? Because you're not only going from 4 million to 8 million, you actually know that you have 16 million avails against that RFP, which sort of per requirement was 10 million. So not only can you fulfill the entirety of that budget, but you can actually encourage the advertiser to spend more, right? And that means your advertising targets go up, and your entire advertising strategy and data strategy, the whole lens in which you look at how we go to market starts to change, right? So it's not just a problem of upping your inventory, but once you address that, and rightfully so, it's your users, then this is sort of the foundation which you can start to build a whole new advertising and data strategy. So, as a technology partner sort of solely dedicated to publishers, we see this playing out in the real world. BuzzFeed was one of the publishers who really gave us an opportunity to prove ourselves. And instantly, as we started working with them, we increased their audience size, their scale, and match rates instantaneously. And these are some of their more high-demand segments they constantly sell out of. So you're looking at sort of the increase in the audience segments that they really value, or their advertisers really value. And so it's not really just about increasing the targetable inventory or having more supply, and once again, and therefore having more revenue, but it's a first step that you can take to fundamentally transform your data and advertising strategy. So I think, so in the beginning of the presentation, I said it's not just about talking about the hidden web today. I think there's a bigger message that we as Permutive, as a team, want to convey, and that is the fact that publishers have a massive opportunity. Once again, if you look at the next 3 to 5 years, you have an opportunity to come out on top and to sit at the top of the advertising ecosystem and hierarchy. Because if you look at what third-party cookies have done, it's really what underpins the entire infrastructure in the ecosystem, right? And so people like companies like Google have come around, and third-party data providers. Essentially, what they did was they took these third-party cookies and they just tracked everyone across the web, and they aggregated that data, and they cut out the publishers, right? So the advertisers come to these third-party providers and Google, and they can get access to the users that you work hard to acquire, right? And ultimately, what Apple has done and what these regulations are doing is, hey, no, you can't do that anymore, right? Unless you have a direct, legitimate relationship with that user, you can't collect and process data about those users. And furthermore, you can't track them across the ecosystem, right? So if you think about what that means is, with these third-party data providers declining and sort of, Google having to figure out what their next move is with the third-party cookie going away, the power is in the hands of the publishers, because you are the ones with valuable data that marketers need, and it's really, you're the one with that legitimate one-to-one relationship with the user. You have the technical ability to collect that data and process that data. You have legitimate legal grounds to do that. So we believe, there's a fundamental shift that is happening in the advertising ecosystem, and the mechanisms that really power this infrastructure is crumbling, which means, well, I'm done almost. Which means it's really, the opportunity is there for publishers to really recognize that opportunity. And the onus is on publishers to really be proactive about that and capitalize on this. And it's not just technology vendors sort of serving publishers. It doesn't take just Permutive, or it doesn't just take 1 or 2 publishers. I think collectively, when publishers come together and they recognize this opportunity and work together to capitalize on this, and they invest in the right technology stack, we really believe that you can come out on top. You look at a third-party data marketplace, it's a $19 billion industry. We believe that rightfully belongs to the publishers. Not that it's going away, but you're the ones creating valuable content. You're the ones delivering value to the advertisers, to the users, and you should be paid the most for that. So we're excited about sort of embarking on that vision and working with publishers to be able to do that.